My dear friends, on this 30th Sunday in the ordinary time of the year, our first reading taken from the book of Exodus is from the section of Exodus called the Book of the Covenant, or the Covenant Code. This is a collection of laws that governed Israel. In this passage, God lays down some laws on how immigrants and the less privileged of the society are to be treated, with special reference to widows and orphans. The first reading for this law is that the chosen people themselves experienced what it means to be immigrants and what it means to be oppressed in a foreign land when they were in Egypt. The second reason is that being the chosen people of a compassionate God, as we had in that reading, they ought to be compassionate with their fellow human beings. The Gospel from Matthew tells us that when the Pharisees heard that Jesus had silenced the Sadducees, they gathered together, and one of them, a lawyer, asked a question to test Jesus. He asked, "Teacher, which commandment in the law is the greatest?" This question is not an easy one when you consider that from the 10 Commandments, the Pharisees, the custodians of the law, came out with 613 commandments. 613. Can you imagine that? If you test some of us now to recite the 10 Commandments, we will not be able to recite the 10 Commandments. How would you expect me to recite 613 commandments? Now, Jesus answered, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your mind. This is the greatest and first commandment. And the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets." In answering this question, Jesus tells us together two different commandments. The first one from the book of Numbers, from the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 6, verse 5, about the love of God. And the second one from Leviticus, chapter 6, verse 5, about the love of neighbor. Now, these were laws known to the people, because this is the content of what they call the Jewish Shema, which they recited as their prayer in the morning and also in the evening. He brought them together to tell them that both of them are important. He makes it clear that love of God and love of neighbor put together is the fulfillment of all laws. Jesus sees the love of God and the love of neighbor as inseparable as the two sides of a coin. There are several passages in the Bible that tell us that the love of neighbor is to love, or to love the neighbor is to love God at the same time. When we remember what happens, or what Jesus tells us in the gospel, Matthew chapter 25, about the last judgment, we're told that at the last, that God is going to assemble the whole world and will divide us into two, as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. The sheep on his right hand, the goats on the left. And then he will turn to those on the right hand, the sheep, and will say to them, "Come, you blessed of my Father, come and inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the beginning of time. Why? For I was hungry, and you gave me to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me to drink. I was a stranger, you welcomed me. I was sick, you visited me. I. And they'll ask him, Lord, when did we see you and do all these things? And he'll say, the moment you did it to the least of my brothers and sisters, you did it to me. That's how we are going to be judged. And then you go to Matthew's Gospel, again, chapter 5. You remember what Jesus tells us. Anyone going to the altar to offer offering or gift, but remembers there that his or her brother has something against him or her, go back home, get reconciled, and then you can come back and offer your gift. In other words, Jesus is saying that you don't have to pretend to be at peace with the God around the sanctuary when you are not at peace with the God you see every day in your neighbor, in your brother, in your sister. So Jesus sees himself present in your brother or your sister. You think of what happens, what you read from the Acts of the Apostles, chapter 9, verses 1 to 9, about the conversion of Saul. We know that Saul at the beginning was a threat to those who were following Jesus Christ. He was persecuting them, throwing them into prison. And one day he was going to Damascus, intent on doing the same thing. And Jesus appeared to him, struck him down from the horse, and then Jesus said to him, Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me? He didn't say, why do you persecute the followers of Jesus of Nazareth? No, but why do you persecute me? Because Jesus sees himself present in all those men, women, children that Saul was persecuting. And what did Saul say? Who are you, Lord? And the voice came and said, I am Jesus, whom you are persecuting. I am Jesus. Don't see it as if it was just men, women, and children. It is myself that you are persecuting. Again, you go to the first letter of John, then what do you read there? Those who say, I love God, and hate their brothers or sisters are liars. For those who do not love a brother or sister whom they have seen, cannot love God whom they have not seen. The commandment we have from him is this: those who love God must love their brothers and sisters also. So God is interested in what we do to our fellow human beings, because whatever we do to others, we do to God. He is particularly interested in what we do to the less privileged of our world. Commenting on this passage, St. Augustine says, love God and love neighbor is realized practically, first of all, by loving your neighbor. So if you want to know who loves God, it's the person who loves neighbor. In the first reading today, my dear sisters and brothers, God lets us understand that the resident aliens, the widows and the orphans, have a special place in his heart. He demands compassionate treatment for these categories of people. God is compassionate. That's what God says in the first reading. And would like us, his children, to be compassionate to others, especially towards the less fortunate in our society. The readings of today, as far as I'm concerned, challenge us as individuals, as families, as communities. They also have a message for governments, because God demands compassionate treatment for immigrants, even the illegal ones. Sisters and brothers, to guide my reflection this Sunday, I would like to ask the following questions. Number one, what is my attitude to the poor and marginalized. 2, am I convinced that God, who has created men and women in his image and likeness, is present in everyone? God is present in everyone. Whether the person is good or not, that's not my business. It is God who judges, not me. Finally, I ask myself, am I as compassionate as God would want me to be? Sisters and brothers, let us pray that we may see God present in our neighbors and treat them with dignity and respect. Let us pray for migrants, refugees, and asylum seekers, that the Spirit of God may touch the hearts of those who meet them and handle their claims. Let us pray to realize that we can only love God by loving our neighbor.